I was born in Corvallis, Oregon, when my dad and mom were working at Oregon State University, and he was invited into the main office in Wheaton. So they moved from doing local campus ministry in Corvallis to Wheaton, Illinois, where the main office was housed. And so he went from doing direct missionary work to doing mission administration, which is kind of a weird transition. He became the director of campus ministry, which is the position I now hold, and then continued kind of up the ranks for the next 25 years. And so it was weird being the son of someone who did ministry but wasn't a pastor, because that was my only context for like my father gets paid to do something Christian, right? I was like, well, I guess he works for a mission, but I would just tell kids that my dad was a pastor, because I didn't know how else to explain what it was he did, because honestly, I didn't really understand what he did, other than I met missionaries all the time. So numerous staff that are still with us met me when I was very, very young. I've known me since I was a child. And we interacted with missionaries from all around the world who would come to our home, who would visit the main office, and that were just around. And so in many ways, having relocated from across the country, the mission family that was based in the Chicago area became our family. We did not live near our grandparents, our aunts and uncles. So the president of the mission, Jackie Stepp, was my grandfather. His wife Dottie taught my Sunday school class and was my surrogate grandmother. And other leadership in Missions Door were my extended family in a very tangible way. The VP of finance lived across our backyard, and his son was my age. So I would walk over to their house all the time and play basketball and play Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And he was like an uncle, his uncle and aunt to me. And so in many ways, I saw played out the reality that the people of God are really a family, and that's not united by blood, but that's united by our commitment to the way of Jesus and to his lordship in our lives. So I'd say that was a radical picture for me, especially for someone who did not grow up near family, who was in a family that had felt the call to go, and had followed that call and eventually into a place where there wasn't family around. And so that was my family, which was a powerful testament to God's love, even when you're distant from people that are normally investing you in that way. And I think that my parents were always active in their church, were always volunteering. My mom was a volunteer worship pastor for a long time, eventually was paid to do it. So we were at church, and that was always a priority, that there was something important about the gathering of God's people, to worship and to stay centered in his way every week. So even as I was playing baseball and we would have a game on Sunday, if there was a church around, we would be at that church Sunday morning, even if it was 8 in the morning before a game that was at 10. And I know as culture's changed and sports has become a big deal, it's easy to let go of the commitment to the consistent gathering of the people of God. But that was just a bedrock part of who we were. And so I was around the people of God, I was around church, I was around missionaries. But I think it wasn't until I was in high school that I started understanding kind of what that looks like and why someone might be willing to do the challenging, sometimes uncomfortable thing of going so that others might hear the good news, that the kingdom of God is here and it's available, and you can turn away from the way of the world and walk into the way of Jesus, and that it's better both now and forever. Because I think we need good news, not just for someday, but we need good news for right now. I think it was my senior year of high school that my dad, I think, had the realization of like, I just spent all this time in my life mentoring college students, but I'm not sure that I've ever taken my son through anything intentional the way I used to with college kids. So he started meeting with me once a week in the mornings. We'd have breakfast and we'd go through a discipleship curriculum. And I remember him asking me like, who do you think God has made you to be? What call do you feel like might be on your life? And I said, I don't know, Dad. Like, I like to read and to write, maybe English, but I don't want to be a teacher. So maybe journalism, because I couldn't conceive of something that involved those aspects that I was good at and I enjoyed, that you could get paid. And I remember my dad looking at me like, well, have you ever considered ministry? And I paused and was like, why would I ever do that? I mean, maybe a youth pastor, they're cool. I could play video games and ultimate frisbee and hang out with high school kids, because I was a high school kid. That seemed like a good deal. But normal, boring church stuff, that sounds horrible. But I think that my father recognized in me some similarities, some gifting. I invited my friends from a very young age, starting in Awana to the youth group in high school. I would invite my friends to events all the time. I thought, why would you not want to be in a community like this? and learn about the life that is truly life and where that life can be found. So I didn't have much shame. I thought that this was the best thing ever, and I wanted to share that with people. Um, and it wasn't until my freshman year of college, I remember sitting watching Patch Adams, so the Robin Williams movie about being a doctor, a non-traditional doctor who was coming up in the medical ranks, realizing that it felt like the doctors were treating patients. They didn't even know their names. They were numbers. They were just a case. They just were a sickness. And as soon as they couldn't cure the person, they stopped the interaction. And Robin Williams' character, Patch Adams, was saying, I know these are people who deserve to be loved and cared for, even if we can never make them well. And so I'm sitting there watching this movie in my freshman year of college, and like fireworks are going off in my head, and felt like God was speaking directly to me, saying like, this is what we do if we're not careful. This is what Christians do, is they treat people like projects. They don't know their names. They only care about them if there's a choose Jesus, and choose Jesus soon. And I was like, there's something about this. When Jesus said it's not the healthy that need a doctor, it's the sick. I've come not to call those who are healthy, but those who are sick. I've come to call the lost back to me, not those who are found, not those who think that they're good enough. And so that was when I started realizing, not only am I committed to following the way of Jesus, I understand that I don't have to perform for God's love, that he loves me just the way I am. And I can respond to his incredible love for me, but that I'm called to extend that sort of love to others, whether they ever choose to follow Jesus. And that was transformational for me. And that kind of started my journey in ministry, saying, I don't have to be like my father just because I have a father who's done ministry, but I can embrace who God has made me to be and the call God's placed in my life. And there are a lot of similarities there. And as I've grown, I've appreciated that, and that's really beautiful. But I certainly went through the stage of being a son, like, oh, you're just like your father. And when you're trying to differentiate and be your own person, like, yeah, I mean, my dad's great, I guess, but I want to be Ryan, whoever Ryan is. And I wasn't sure who that was yet. But as I've embraced more and more who God made me to be, it was much easier for me to appreciate and see the aspects of my dad's character and his call and his gifting in ministry, and now how I benefited from growing up around that by kind of knowing the culture in a second nature way. I didn't have to learn to interact there. I was kind of around it all the time, and so it gave me a unique perspective and a unique ability to move in both the church world and then in the world of people who didn't know Jesus at all. I didn't go to a Christian university, went to a secular school, and so I was around a lot of people who weren't sure what they wanted to do with their lives, and weren't sure what not only the meaning of life is, not only what the good life is, but who Jesus was and whether Jesus had anything to say to their life right now. And so I think that benefited me significantly. And I was able to embrace that call to ministry and then sort through, what does that mean? Do I just like college students because I happen to be in that phase? Or is there a tangible call to this unique time in people's lives that can be really significant, and seeing the trajectory change and then the ripple of that impact in their communities?